and you would start the oasis with the different nekudas. So you take the different nekudas, different vowels, and you would start them to create different shemas. And the whole mahalach it's mahalach of shemas. It's really it's dveikas ayidei shemas, that you cleave the Eibusher through saying the kaviyachol, the name, the different names of Hashem. And he talks very little bit about the spheres. The spheres is not so, in Avraham Abulafia story, you find very little about the spheres. It's the Iker Terase is miyused on Sefer Yetzirah, and we'll talk more when we get to the sugya. Iker Terase is connected to Sefer Yetzirah, and in Sefer Yetzirah itself, through the way the Chachmei Ashkenaz, Chassidei Ashkenaz, with Mefatech, they developed and revealed what the Sefer Yetzirah has to do, what is explained, and Be'ikr through Rabbi Lezer of Gemaisa. Rabbi Gemaisa is the Baal HaRekech. The Baal HaRekech, the Svarim that we have from the Baal HaRekech, today they printed a few more Svarim that they have. And if you look through the Svarim, you can find Mamish the Shitta very clearly of Abulafia. And Abulafia just makes it more, is Mefatech, he develops it more, but the Nekuda of using the Oisius, using the letters together with the Nekudas comes already from the Chassidei Ashkenaz. And in the Chassidei Ashkenaz, which Buddha Chassid, and they're one of the famous ones, they also used something, but they didn't write. So we don't know exactly what they did. But the Maila of Rabbi Abulafia, he actually wrote. He wrote Kamat 50 Svarim, 50, and in those Svarim itself, there's different types of Svarim. Some Svarim are more explaining the concept, and some are actually the experience that he had. He wrote when he was having these experiences. So they're Svarim that he calls Nevui, like prophecy. Like in the state that he reached through Tziruf, he would write these Svarim. I just want to read you a little from Oitzer Aragonus. For some reason I couldn't find the Sefer itself, but I have a shtickle copy over here. And Sefer Oitzer Aragonus is the most elaborate, the most explanation of what his path is, what his derech is. And he explains Barichas what the Chachmas at Tziruf is, and we're going to see soon exactly what this is. There's a few very big nekudas here that we have to talk about. So first of all, he talks about his life. He says who he is, where he's born, at the end. This mamish, he goes to a long arichis of the Sefer, and in the end he says, he goes to a whole Sefer explaining what the Chachmas Tziruf is, and says by the end, by the way, I want to tell you, I want to megalit you, I want to reveal to you that I'm actually talking about myself. And then he talks about that he was born in Spain, and then he moved, and then when he was 20 years old, he decided to go to Eretz Yisrael to see the Nar Sambatyan, and then there was a Mulchama between the Ishmaelim and he had to leave. And then and he started learning philosophy by a person named Shmuel Reb Hillel, which is we think is the Baal Sefer Tigmuli HaNefesh. And then he talks about one of his Talmidim, which we know is Rabbi Yosef Katalia, the Baal Shara Oira. Okay, then he writes like this. Vani bezmani Yosef ben Aleph Lamed Shana b'Medinas Barcelona, when he was in Barcelona in Spain, he started learning Sefer Yetzirah. B'ti Alev Ruach Hashem. V'echta Sefer Chachmas and Sefer Nevuos. This is where the Sefer Chachmas Sefer Nevuos. Ver Mara Noiros Rabbis v'Niflois, and I saw wonderful visions. But he says, V'risi demyoyne shigoyis nivhalu ri'oni alai ki loy matzasi ishe mine shivani aderech asher eilach boi. V'aken ki iver mishamash b'tzarayim tesvav shana v'asatan oimi yamina l'steni. It says for 15 years, so from when he was 31 to 46, he says he was struggling with the Satan, and he didn't have clarity. Nivhala Riyoina means that he saw visions, he had some type of experiences, but his experience was very metushtash, was very unclear, and he writes it has to do with the Satan. What's the Satan? No, what's the Satan? Yeah, what's the Satan? So it doesn't say the Satan. There's a few places that he actually explains what the Satan is. He writes in Chayelim Haba, Soid Hasheni Azeb Ben Troikin, that the Satan is Seichel Teva Nefesh, which is a very nice definition. I think it's good to know this. That Seichel Teva Nefesh, that the Satan, what's the Satan? Your Seichel, your intellect, your normal way of thinking. This is part of the Satan. Your Teva, your nature, and your Nefesh Abahami, your lower part of self that gets the better part of you, which is a very godly Gishmaka definition of what the Satan is. It's very stark. It's interessant that no Chassidische Sforim pick this up because this is a very Gishmaka. Seichel Teva Nefesh. Seichel Teva Nefesh, that's the Dagas Satan.
That's a bad thing? Or?
No, that's me. That's a Metzias.
That's what he uses.
To say that the Satan is what gets you down, what makes you things. Your Seichel, because his whole derech is to leave your Seichel, to let go of your left brain. We'll see soon how you do this. And so not to let your Seichel and your Teva and your Nefesh. But in other place, he writes that Satan is saying Gemati or Zeralovim. So it's clear that he's talking about Chura. I won't say, but this L'chura, what he's talking about, has to do with something with Zeral Vatala. What exactly I can't explain, but if you know a little bit from Zohar and from other sources, that what he's saying is that if you don't have, if you're koyach hatzir, and your koyach of dimyan is not clear, is not pure, is not Torah, so then you're going to have visions, but your visions, you're going to see things, but your visions are going to be klippa. It's going to be Satan. Because if you use your koyach hadimian for fantasy and for narishkeit, and it doesn't have to be dafke zeral v'tola mamash chas v'shalom, but even the Moira Naim says zeral v'tola is wasted words. If your machshava is not clear, which means if your koyach hadimian, it will say very clear what he's saying is that if you daydream narishkeit, then when you're going to try to have an experience, you're going to see narishkeit. Meaning, if your uncontrolled subconscious is that it's not filtered. Okay, l'fi erech, every person has l'fi erech. I'm not talking about big tzaddikim, but l'fi erech. If when you stop thinking and your brain goes on into automatic, and the visions, and I don't mean visual because if you're not visual, your hands are visual, but the cheshek that comes into your consciousness is all shtusim or worse, then you have to work the koyach hadimian. So if you're going to work the koyach hadimian and your koyach hadimian is all cloudy and muddy, you're not going to have emissary visions. You're not going to have clear visions, and it's going to be subtly meaning. So it's not going to be clear. So this is one thing.
Does he give us a break?
No, this is very negaya. So you have to work on yourself. This is that's telling you that you have to make sure that your machshava d'remaisa is beseder. That you're okay. You have to be nizar on these things, and of course they don't have to tell you what you have to do, and you should just make sure that you work on yourself. So it's not cheap. And I want to tell you, Gada, that once when we did this many years ago with a group of people. I was younger and it was maybe not so smart, and I did it with people that were not, I don't want to say roy, but they weren't definitely in the mezuchach, and they weren't ready for this experience, and they had terrible experiences. They had crazy visions and demons and dogs, and it was crazy. People almost really needed a lot of therapy after this. So it's dangerous. So, I'm just giving you, telling you straight out, that you have to make sure that your koyach of your imagination is pure. So you should mahara b'tshuva. That's at least for 1 minute. I mean, it's just anyways, do that once in a while.
Does he say how to clear up the?
No. We're gonna see. We're gonna see soon. He has a derech, a shtickle derech.
I'm not talking about taras and machshuv. I'm talking koyach hadimian to clean up.
He has a way. We'll
clarify.
Yes, I'll tell you. Okay. Wait a second. You'll see soon. He has a shtickle. He has a shtickle mahalach, which he doesn't say clearly, but we'll see it soon. Okay. And then he says, Shnas Eliyahu Eliyahu is Gematria 46, Chafetz Bi Hashem V'Yeno Hicha Kodesh, and that's finally when I was able to have some clarity with this Nikuda. So, in Sefer Chai Olam Haba, and Oyer Seichel, and in Oyer Zargonus, all these Svarim talk be'emes about this idea of Tziruf, which we didn't explain, but this is what it talks about, using combinations of letters. But at the end of the Sefer of Oyer Zargonus, he writes about taking Kach B'yotcha 8 Sefer Moir, V'ilo shoyncha medaber tamid benigun no v'noyim v'nachas. V'havent b'dorm am tziruf and shiyatz m'picha yima shetzitz b'chol asher shetirtza. V'chol shoynes at tzarech lashivim alam chamram. And then he speaks about taking שיצורך הקומוס בידך ככניס ביד הגיבור כשדחש בדבר ואיך ותזכר בליבך באויס ידו יסלח ותציינו בפיך מויץ תסך תשמע שמעתו ישמע זנך מה שביר ודאך והוב לבח מה שמור ויתנו בפיך וקוס מיד זכר לסמלי בכל. Okay, so v'dak hu yiftach lach meftach liftach b'chamishim shari bina. So he talks about a very big he says it's something that's very interesting that you don't find anywhere. What he means, I have to be very clear. It's very hard to really understand what he wants. The Svarim it's very hard. The Svarim are very hard. Unfortunately, the Rashba and the Chayet. The Rashba wrote B'chal that he was not. We don't have to say what the Rashba said about him, but the Sefer Chayet writes that he wrote the Sefer in such a way, such a convoluted way, with chesombos, with things. He says because that I don't want to say what he said, but basically he had nothing intelligent to say, so he made it look so interesting that that he thinks something is deep. That's basically what the Chayet said. But that's not Roiv Mekubalim from the time of the Ramak were Makabel the Svarim of Abulafia. In the Ramak, this big shtiklach in Pardes Ramoinim from Chai Olam Haba, a huge shtiklach about the Oasis and about the Tziruf from Chai Olam Haba, and then we know from Reb Chaim Vital in Shai Kedusha at the end, and then later the Chida writes that it's Dvorim Nefloim and it's became accepted. So, but it's very muzar. It's very hard to decipher.
It might be they wrote like this because he was too open. They wanted to hide.
Could be. That's what I'm saying. So we don't know. So in other words, either way, the word is it's not relevant. Why first of all, the Rishonim didn't write well. I mean, a lot of Rishonim. You look at the Rishonim is they're mitzumtzim in the oisius. It's very unusual for the Rambam, but most of the Rishonim wrote very hard. It's a hard language. Besides that, we're not really sure what he's trying to say. So we're going to do be'erech, what we think Abulafia was trying to say, and we'll see. This is going to be a little bit different because,
No one says Sulam Ali is the same thing.
No, Sulam Ali doesn't talk about writing.
It says writing.
No, yeah, that's different. This is a little different. Okay, we'll get to Sulam Ali because that's already a variation of Abulafia. Let's go to this try to understand Abulafia himself. Whether he wants you to be. He wants you to get to be induced, to be into a certain consciousness. He wants you to be in a certain state. And then he wants you to create tzirufim, which we're going to speak soon, what the tzirufim are. And then in the middle, he talks about writing. So this writing, what's the kuda? Why do you have to write? What's the negeya to write? What's the negeya to write and how are you supposed to write? So there's two ways how to look at it. One is that you're in a state of, let's say, a high state, you're in a high place, and then you want to bring down something, so you're writing to show what's the experience. In other words, you're in this state, so you're writing what you're actually experiencing. So it's more like to create tzirufim on a page. So you're creating the page, you have this koyach, and then you're writing it in the tziruf, you're writing it on the page. But there could be also another way of thinking about it. There's actually the opposite. Because you asked the question, and it's a very good question. How does a person get to a place? Because he writes this in Loyer Seichel, and you'll see soon in Shai Kedusha, it's also written many times, that the choshesh oisishah, part of the nafshecha megufach, which you talked about, is ispashas and nefesh ma'aguf. The Thomas ben Olam Haza, you have to divest yourself from the physical world, and then you should start doing the tzirufim. How does a person start to elevate themselves? How could you go high if you're low? What do you do? So one of the eitzes you can do is through writing. We're going to do it fakert the way. We're going to do a little bit opposite. One of the ways to do this is actually through writing. What do you do? In the Chachmas Tziruf, one of the things is to create new combinations of tzirufim. L'mashal, if you have this also in Shari Kedusha, where he talks about, so you have Derech Mashal, Eretz, Otzer, Rotzer, Rotz, Tsar, Tzara, the same Tzadik, Reish, Aleph, you can create many different tzirufim. So you take the same letter and you keep on changing, you keep on mitzaref in a different cycle. You just keep on cycling the letters. You're cycling the letters. You're mitzarefim. You're creating new combinations. It says about.
I'm sorry. Does that mean one letter becoming another?
No. Aleph Beis Aleph Gimel Beis Aleph Beis Gimel Aleph. That the which means that there was a type of tzirufim. I don't want to talk about this too much because this is the next sugya. Just want to say that the idea of the tziruf is you're just making new combinations. How are you making the combinations? So he in Oitzer Agonus, he's going to tell you this is the mahalach. There's Tumura and there's the Turekin. There's different things that you have to do. You can do gematria, you can do exchange, atbash, you can do different ways how to look at the letters, and you're changing them constantly changing them. Before you get to that place, there's another problem, which is that your mind is cluttered. Your mind has all this machshavas, all these thoughts. How do you quiet the mind to be in a place that you can actually create tzirufim? In other words, instead of saying that this comes after the tzirufim, once you're already doing the tzirufim, you're creating these letters and you're writing now. How do you create for yourself a place that your mind is actually not full of all these machshavas, of tidas machshava, and machshava zaras, or just a lot of different thoughts, that you're actually open to actually start thinking about tzirufim? So I think that this is maybe what he's saying. This is a path that he's telling us is how to empty your mind. Just like we talked about Ashkata, this is another mahalach. This is a mahalach through dibur. You're saying what's coming to you, and you're writing it out. When you write something, once you write something on a page, then you're ready. Gave it out. Let me give you a simple mashal. If you have a machshava, let's say it's not a machshava zar. Let's say it's just not a machshava, let's say machshava zar. Just a zar, a narish machshava. The way to get rid of this machshava, one way, is actually to think it. In other words, if you have a machshava, let's say, forget about machshava zaras. Let's say even a narish machshava. This person is my soynach. Right? This guy did this to me. Some narish machshava. I'm a chutzev at this. You have this machshava. One way to get rid of this machshava is actually let it finish.
Bubble out.
Let it bubble out. Let it finish. You take it. Okay, this guy's mechutzev. Taka? Mechutzev? Yeah. Okay, fine. Once you thought about it, the reason why, if you keep on cutting off the machshava, so then you leave with, it's machshava. Okay, I'm not going to think about it. Okay, good. 5 seconds later, weiter the machshava. 5 seconds later, weiter the machshava. So one way is, I'm not talking about it's a machshava zara. I'm not talking about it's a machshava schutz. This is a machshava that's not appropriate, let's say. Finish thinking the machshava and the gemara. It's finished. You have nothing else to think about it. Okay, the guy's a mechutzev and he did this to me. Finish. But if you think about it, if you think of it, if you hack it up in the middle, oh, how can I think of the machshava? Okay, fine, you're good to eat. Okay, 5 minutes later, the machshava comes in. 5 minutes later, the machshava comes again. So the way sometimes to give him to finish him, to let out the machshava, is actually to finish it. Take it to its conclusion. Give it intention, and it lets go.
Talking out the same thing.
Same idea.
Yeah, but once you let it be typhus magam, sometimes it's just
I'm not talking about typhus magam. It's not. What?
keep going and going and going.
No, there's another thing about. Now, there's another thing about this. God, there's a mimer for the Rebbe Hashab in Ranat, where he says that when a person is angry, Shidafka should not speak. They should not speak about it, because if you speak about it, then then you talk weiter and weiter and weiter. So what actually you're doing is you're creating a whole story. I'm not talking about a machshava ra. I'm not talking about you're in anger. And you're told, yeah, you go to a therapist, and that's why therapy never helps, because you go weiter and weiter and weiter, and more issues come up, and everyone's, Baruch Hashem, the therapists are making money, because all these are sitting with a therapist. But it never helps, because the more you talk about it, the bigger the problem is. I'm talking about a narsha machshava, a small, silly machshava you have about something, just finish it. Finish it, and it's nigmar. You'll see it's done. Not something that has a lot of cheshek about it, and a lot of desire about it. Just a narsha machshava, just you let it go. Most things that are going on in a person's head is like chatter. It's pitputoisis. It's like a tzipur. It's like a little bird that says narishkeit. What's haksten kaparan? What are you telling me? You know, there's nothing's going on. It's stupidity. It's narishkeit. That's the metzias, no? So just stop. Yeah, unfortunately, this is the metzias. So what he's saying is like this. Just like in a machshava, when you finish the conclusion, it lets it out. It finishes. The same thing also if you do b'dibur. And especially if you do it in writing. When you write something, God, the Piasetzna has a word, and he says that if a person is really angry, and you have something, a faribel about someone, you should go write a letter to that person. Don't put it in the mailbox, but write the letter and tell them exactly how you feel. And he says, once you do that, you're already finished. Because,
if you're angry.
Yeah, that's if you need to. But I'm saying if you need to. But that's the fact. It goes a little less and less. But I'm saying, but once you write it already, once you write it one time, it's a little less. You read it again, it's a little less, and finally, just let it go.
Specifically anger?
No, any emotion. This is what I'm trying to say. A lot of times, things that are going on in our head is not really real. It's not real. When something is real, it's real, and then it just gets more and more and more and more. And when something's not real and it's narishkeit, it's just pitput vorim. It's just like stupidity. That's chirping in your brain. You just have to let it go. Finish it out. Just write it out. It's over. You say that this is what the mahalach is, and this is what the mahalach I think what Abulafia is saying. You want to get to a place where you're going to do proper tzirufim, and your mind is going to be clear, and you're able to do this. First, write. What do you have to write? Write as if you're doing tzirufim. What does it mean to write when if you're doing tzirufim? What's the koyach of tziruf? The koyach of tziruf is not logical. You're not following a logic. There is a pattern. And there's a system. You have to know the system, and we're going to try to learn a little of the system. But in the system itself, it's called free association. Free association means it's very loose. There's no order. Let's say a person says ratza, tzara. What's the chiluk between ratza and tzara? It's the opposite word actually. And the Baal Shem writes in Tefillah that if you want, you have to change from tzara to ratza. So it's actually a mitzvah of the oasis to be something the opposite. But that's not a problem because you're doing it not seicheldik. You're not trying to think this word means this and what's this connection to that. You don't want to empty your logical mind. You want to empty your subconscious narisha mind. The narisha mind is free association. Free association means you walk outside in the street and it starts raining. You think about your umbrella. Now you said, I need an umbrella. But I can't afford an umbrella. How come I can't afford an umbrella? Because I don't have a job. How come I don't have a job? Because the guy fired me. How come I fired me? Because I'm a klutz. And then, for 3 seconds, you have a whole story that's total free association. How the umbrella leads you to the issue that you have a sichsich with your friend when you're 12 years old. This is the way it works. So, I'm not saying. But free association means you're moving quickly, and that's the way you're emptying your mind. This is what we're going to try to do now. So we're going to try to do is like this. What?
So we should do that today?
Yeah. How do we empty the subconscious mind? How do we empty the chatter that's going on that's free associative? That's jumping from one thing to the next to the other thing, so that our mind can be clear from all the machshavas, from the subconscious koyach adimyan, that it should be quiet, that we can actually start thinking with clarity, so we can do also hashkata. This is another way of doing it, to actually write it out. But you're writing it in a way of tziruf. So then when you're going to start doing the tzirufim, you're going to already be in a state ready to do proper tzirufim. You understand? So you're writing it, l'moshel. If you're writing, and he says it's clear, you can do it in any language. We have to see why, but this is, he writes gematrias of Greek words. He has a dibolish and his gematria. He has a whole bunch of different words constantly coming, Greek and Latin words that he says he makes. He has the system because in the koyach tziruf we're not going to talk about this. It's a big oimek, but be'emes all no, it's not only Tumura. The be'emes. What? Yeah, that's something else. That's so why taka? What's the market? Or Yigasa Dusa? What's the market? The Be'em is that the higher Madregas of Torah, the Torah of the Atzilus, is the Torah that includes all the sounds of the universe. That's the higher Torah. It's got this week's parsha. The Maimer. No, there's a shtickle. There's a chidah. Between the two nuns is a hidden Torah. What's the hidden Torah between the two nuns of Parshas Baal Loischa? What's that? So the Chidah brings down a Masech Sofrim. He brings down, and the guy of the Boker is actually a Chenas Hayom, but he brings it down. Doesn't say b'Shem Chenas Hayom. That there's a Torah that's going to be revealed also loving. The 7 levels of the Torah. Now we have Chamish Chumshal Torah, but there's a madreg of 7 levels of Torah, and that little sefer that only has two psukim, which corresponds that the Baal HaTurim writes. One is 12 and one is 7 to the 2 psukim in that Torah. That Torah will eventually be revealed. All the Torah that was in this Gala through since Matan Torah, which means that there'll come a time where every single thing in the world will reveal Achdus Hashem and will become part of the Torah. Okay, but that's where it makes sense, because every single variation of sound really comes from the makar of the original sound. There's one sound, and the sound comes from Kol Gadol Yosef, and then it's mitfatech into Shiva Lashonas. But the Shiva Lashonas, the 70 languages, actually come from the original Lashon Kodesh, which means that there's one primal sound, and all the primal sounds then develop into these 70 sounds, which echo into Chinese and Japanese and Hindu, whatever the language is, which is all the. Well, the love the kulam shechem echad. The safa brura means the inclusion of all the sounds into one sound.
When it comes to gematria,
well, one second. There's no shot. What?
Is this called journaling?
No, it's not journaling. It's a little different thing. No, this is called free associative writing.
What's the difference in
At the journal, you're writing something with machshava. Today, this happened to me. This will happen in the morning. This will happen in the afternoon.
writing it out?
Yeah, you're writing out. Emes. Here, you're not writing through seichel. You're not saying what's on my mind. Don't start with what's on my mind. You can start like that. But write whatever comes to your mind. Don't say, okay, well, 1:30 today I did this, and 2 o'clock I did this, and 2:30 I did this. This is a cheshbon nefesh. You're writing a journal. That's something else. Here you're saying, I want to write one thing, and I want that thing to take me onto a journey. Wherever it is. The word Ratza reminds me of my Baba. Zolzain, so write Baba. And then this reminds, whatever comes to your head, pretend that your crazy machshavas,
Brainstorming.
No, not brainstorming. Yeah, whatever your crazy machshavas are going on now is now put into a paper. You're moving and write quickly. This whatever comes, write, and it could be bubble mice, could be mice, but usually it will be. And whatever thought comes to not to your mind you should put in no, it's joking. Whatever your thought comes to your mind, write it, and whatever free associative write until you feel quiet. To do this, also, we need to have a little bit shtickle ashkata because we can't just start writing. So we're gonna try to do this practice a little for a few minutes, and.
So once you write a sentence, that means you're really not free association.
Right, that's why it's not a sentence. Whatever comes,
No sentence.
No, one thing from Morgan, just whatever.
Sentences, stories, it's not free.
No, exactly. But sometimes, Grada, if you're going to be in an interesting state, then you will actually be something. There'll be shtickle gilly over there. Kann wissen. We'll find out. But this is what we're going to try to do. Okay, we want to do a little bit more, but okay, this is the we're going to do it for now. We're going to do it like this because he talks about to do first shtickle ispashas agashmi. We're going to try to do that. We're going to maybe lower the lights a little bit. We'll do ispashas agashmi, and then when you feel like you're in a state, whatever state you are, start writing. You feel verklempt, you feel you get stuck. Close your eyes. Try to do ispashas agashmi, and then weiter writing. You want to write b'koyach tziruf. If you want to write the same, it's going to be a little too dark, Yankee, because we have to write. Okay, too much. Okay. Oisius, whatever comes. If it's oisius, it's oisius. Whatever comes, right? Yeah. You could start with that, but that's what that's a machshava. Then write with it. Whatever comes to your mind, start writing.
So we didn't go.
What? Some people think tzirufim. Every person thinks different. No,
we didn't talk about what the tzirufim are, like how you do the table.
We didn't do it. We didn't talk about. So let's be free associative for now. This is going to be a little bit wild.
Should we try to focus on
What?
like what language?
Any language is
Okay, the Abulafia writes you can do it in any language. Of course, the better is Lashon Kodesh, but if Lashon Kodesh is not your language, it's going to be forced. Then it's not going to work. So whatever language works for you, at this point, all we want to do is empty the subconscious onto a piece of paper. Once empty the subconscious on a piece of paper, then we can start talking about doing taka real tzirufim.
In other words, which language it comes.
Yeah, that's what you're right. Exactly.
Whichever language you dream.
Exactly. Emes. So you could start with one noisa, Emes.
writing already? I'm thinking, not to write down the whole thing. Then I start writing.
Yeah, it has to be, it goes straight to machshava to ksiva. There should be no stop.
You can't write in one word. So I write it with
Yeah, usually it's words. Yeah. Umbrella, job.
We're not incorporating gag grammar, commas, periods, all these things. It's just words.
Simcha, this was sugar, chas v'shalom.
You're saying yes, there is.
No, of course not.
Whatever pops into your mind.
Whatever pops into your mind.
So we're not
But-
turning those letters around.
If it works for you. Some people naturally works that way. They see one letter, right away reminds them of another letter, and they read it backwards. Some people have this type of brain. We're going to talk about soon, but this is that they're already doing tzirufim. This is already trying to do tzirufim.
Then we should write both letters.
Yes, if that comes to you. This is a very elementary first step into this program. Just writing, and maybe something will come. We're going to start this. We're doing a little bit of shkota and a little bit of Spashas Agashmik, so we should be taka. Shouldn't taka be mamash tusim, because we don't want to stand right all your taivas yitzahar on the paper. We want to be in a shtickle a little bit of better madrega, so we're going to do a little bit of shkota, quiet for 5 minutes. We're going to do this together. Then you're going to open your eyes and you're going to start writing this right and see. Then we'll take notes and compare.